All right, everybody, we're going to be working now on continuing our work in Chapter 8. I had a little bit of a preliminary discussion here with everybody in class, just kind of reviewing what we were doing last time and kind of what it means. Let's go ahead and open up our project from last time. And we do want to open the website, but we do want to make sure that we're opening up the correct thing. And this is where I ran into a little bit of a snafu here, because I was choosing this to go into, and that's not right. In fact, I still don't see the folder I need here. Are you guys catching that? Why? I'm not finding the folder. Yeah, and I'm thinking I might actually have to go to the project to open this up, so and now I am finding it. You see that? And you see there's a solution. So what should I be opening? But isn't it, don't you think it's curious that this folder here, yeah, and I'm getting here from Brian, I don't think that's the right version, right? Something's not right, Brian. You're feeling it too, and I'm feeling it. So it's really hard to say. So I think the best way to really figure this out is to look at the physical file system, because I see that this folder does exist here, right? Why will it not be seen from here? And of course, you guys don't have a quick answer for me, do you? Could it be that should I close Visual Studio and reopen it? Is that kind of a silly thing to do? Is that the kind of thing you try? Yeah, you should. I'm trying. But I'm kind of thinking maybe I should open up one of these. And do you guys notice I got this solution file sitting here, and really what Visual Studio's been doing with the 2017 version, if you look at that path, is it takes the solution files and stores them somewhere else if you don't pay attention, and that's exactly what happened to me. So I'm actually going to open this up, not really being 100% certain it's going to work. I'm going to be real frank with you. And I don't think this is right. Do you? All right, so I'm going to click on my project here, and it tells me where I'm located. So you see the properties down here, it says full path. Right. Yeah, that's not where I want to be. I almost want to take that like start page and like nuke it just so I can start fresh in some ways. You know what I mean? Because it kind of leads you astray a little bit, and that's why I'm always really cautious about it. So instead, I'm going to actually choose, believe it or not, open folder and try this approach. And we'll see what this does. Does this seem right? That's even weirder. Because really what I want to see here is I want to see a JSON file, and I'm not seeing it. But what if I click up here? Still nothing. So what should I do? What's this file? No, it's not JSON though, right? I think I just want to go home. Cindy Lou, does this all make you feel better? All right. All right. So I'm gonna be real frank with you guys. I'm a little bit at a loss here for what is the right approach. So I'm turning off the start page. My thing is all closed. I'm going to open website. This is what I think I should do. but I know where I created my file. My file is here. My solution folder is here. My web calculator is here. Yeah. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back. Isn't that curious? I know what's happening. I finally caught on. So I love this because you guys get to watch me stumble. Because what's happening is it's actually in this Google Drive. I have my old Google Drive is still on my drive in it and never got rid of it. So it's always taking me back there. All right. So now I got to figure out, is it in my old Google Drive or is it my new Google Drive? That doesn't seem right to me, right? You're in agreement? Okay. There's no JSON file. That's really the key here. All right. So then maybe it is in my old Google Drive. But how do I know? See, I'm working on my old Google Drive. See how it's got like the slash through it? That means no. The new Google Drive is here in my G Drive, and I'm hoping that you guys aren't doing this too. So I gotta like just resolve to delete the old version of it, right? I should be brave and just do it. All right. Does it look better? Hey! Oh, it took 20 minutes. All right, let's take a break. No, I'm kidding. All right, so here's our JSON file. We're seeing it inside this environment. Where I kept track, actually you guys kept track for me and I'll just pretend like I did it, was the fact that we got through basically the steps prior to step number 6. We had a command prompt, you guys remember this? We ran npm init, and what that does is it initializes a project. And the first step of creating a project is creating a package JSON file, which to node.js is the equivalent of creating a solution file to a .NET environment. It just contains information about the project. The thing that we are going to be doing to that file is we are actually going to change a couple of things. And I want you to look at this, and I want you to be really careful about doing any edits. Because we created this file automatically with the tool, right? So if this part of the file looks different than what's in the book, I'm cognizant of the fact that there's different versions of the software and sometimes things change, right? So I'm going with whatever the tool is doing automatically. I'm not going to go try to change it to what it used to be and then find that the tool doesn't handle it. Make sense? Okay. But there is a part that we don't have, and that is this thing with dependencies. All right? Now, let's talk about what dependencies are. When we work in Visual Studio and you guys go in and you add Jquery, right? You guys have done that. Or when you go in and you add the modernizer, right? You've done that as well. Or you added the QUnit testing components, right? You went to the NuGet package manager, sounds familiar, and you installed basically pre-configured pieces of software, or usually they're just folders with stuff in them, right? And Node.js has its own package manager. So when I type in a dependency here, what I'm really doing is I'm telling it that I need some additional files added to my project to make this work. All right. Did anybody go past this step and then figure out how to install these two components? A couple of you, okay. So here's my battle plan, and you guys can contest me all you want if I'm wrong. I'm going to take these dependencies and I'm going to type them right into the JSON file. At this point, I got it open in Visual Studio. I can just do it there, right? Absolutely. So let's take that step first. All right. And I see you smiling back there because it's not quite as easy as it looks, right? All right. So what I'm going to try to do here I'm trying to find like some screen efficiency here where I can maybe split screen it ish. Yeah, I have too many things open on too many screens, I think, is my problem. Yeah, that's not very pretty either, but we can make it kind of workable. All right, that kind of works, right? All right. So what's that? Well, the repository is where, well, okay, let's talk about it like this. The repository is where you're storing your source control files. Do you know what GitHub is, or Bitbucket? Have you heard of those? Okay. So if you were using one of those tools to store your source code and to keep your versions for you, you would list it there. So if you used GitHub, the entry would probably be Git. And if you use Bitbucket, it would probably be Bitbucket. But there's others, okay? And that's only if you're using those tools as a source control. We're not doing that right now. Right. It is the version difference. In the older version, if you left the entry blank, it still put it in and left empty quotes. In the modern version, they're like, well, it's not there, whatever. You know, they just don't include it. So that's like one of those things, don't go adding it in. If you do add it in, I don't think it's going to break anything. But it's superfluous, basically. All right, but what we do need to do is add this dependencies thing. And I want you to notice really carefully here, because usually this is one of those things that people do miss. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do that. Do you notice, like, before you enter dependencies, it goes right underneath author and license? But do you guys notice that there's actually a comma right here? That's one of the #1 mistakes people make in this chapter, is they skip that comma. And guess what happens? It doesn't work. So we got to put that comma in. So we're going to start right here, comma, and then let's just go ahead and type dependencies. Notice it gave me curly brackets automatically, like it recognizes the tool and the syntax. Imagine that. All right, and then inside the dependencies, we're going to add 2 different libraries, is basically what they are. Okay? One is formidable, and then I can have a little discussion about this too. What do you suppose I'm going to say? See if you guys have become predictive. Now, I love it because Visual Studio knows I'm working with node.js. It recognizes the syntax and it tries to auto-complete. Yeah, these are node.js libraries, not Visual Studio libraries. Well, they could be, in fact, they probably are JavaScript libraries. Okay, but notice here it says formidable 1.x. Should I just do 1.x? Right, that sounds like the voice of experience here. No. Right, don't. Any suggestions? How about I just go with what it suggests? But do you notice that there's these little symbols that go with it? There's like a little caret and a tilde. Do you guys remember what those symbols meant in CSS? Remember, like that advanced CSS stuff? In one ear out the other, totally forgot it already? Starts with or includes, right? Right? So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to choose the top one. Why not? Seems like a good version to me. Yeah, and that's a good point, Joy, because I didn't do that. I didn't hover, did I? But yeah, we'll give you alternative text. That is the current stable version. There's no reason not to go with it. And then there's another library we need to add called Express. I'm going to get a colon in there. And, well, hey, that's a whole lot different than 3.000. Guess what I'm going to install? The new one. Right where I install old software. And that's it. All right. I will pause for a moment, and I will pause the recording. Okay, so at this point, what we want to do next is we're going to move on to step number 8. Really kind of whether this worked or not is still kind of a mystery to us, but let's let it stay a mystery because it's not really that big a deal. All right, so step number 8, it says open Visual Studio Express for web. Oh, I thought we already did that. Okay, so open up your project. Done. Thank you, Microsoft. And it says in the Contoso website folder, create an index.js file and add a reference to the express and formidable packages as follows. So, this is our Contoso web folder. Can we agree on that? Okay. So they want us to put an index.js file not inside the solution and not inside the calculator. They don't want it in here, right? They want it out on the root level. Do you guys read it the same way? Okay. So on the root level, we're going to go ahead and we are going to create a new item. And what kind of file is this? A JavaScript file. What are we going to call it? Index. Lowercase I. Not default. This technology works differently. So there's our index.js file. Go ahead and open that up. And then inside there, that's where you want to grab the code from step number 9 and drop it in. Now, some of this is kind of interesting syntax, and anybody who's been a PHP person should not be intimidated by it. When you do PHP, you do a couple of different types of statements to bring in code from other files. One's an include, right? And one's a require. Do you guys remember what the differences are from that class? Right, that's exactly right. Right. The include tries to bring in the file if it's there. If it's not, whatever. Require, if it's not there, it doesn't work. Okay, so this basically doing the same thing. All right. Another thing that we're going to do is add another statement here. So add a line. In step number 10, it says we're adding a line here to basically handle static requests. So what's a static request? Yeah, it's requesting a specific URL. It's not dynamically generated. Like when you're on like Facebook, you're not like typing in like the name of your friend's page.html or whatever, right? You're just kind of clicking on things and it just does it. A static request means if somebody does type in a specific URL, it knows how to handle it. All right, so this line, oh wait, that's not code. That's too much code. This is the code. That's not a knife, this is a knife. Right? All right, next next we're going to move on to the default HTML page. So go ahead and open that up. And it says here, add code to redirect the user. Oh no, we don't want to go to that page, I'm sorry. We're going to stay here and then add this next little snippet of code. Now you guys are noticing, now we're working with a different tool. And it's got its own syntax. Are you guys catching this? Right? I expect you to memorize this for the final exam. Oh no, wait, there is not the final exam. Right? Don't worry about memorizing it. But what this thing will do It redirects the user to the default page if the URL in a file name does not include a file name. Does that make sense? So if it's not finding something, it takes you to the home page instead of just not doing anything or giving you an error. That's considered a polite thing to do. In addition, we're going to add a couple more things. There's 3 lines in step number 12 right near the bottom. And, I guess I should probably do what they're doing. I'm looking at their code, and they're spacing it out real nicely like this so you can see all the little pieces we're adding. And what they're doing here is they're setting up a variable for port, and they're setting up port 8080 for listening for traffic, for communications. Now here's a pop quiz, not for points though. When you guys are surfing the web, right, you're using internet protocols, right? Internet protocols operate over TCP/IP, right? You get IP addresses, and then for every IP address, there's a certain number of ports, individual ports that are available for every IP address. Does anybody know how many that is? 2? Is that what you said? Nope. Higher. Not 255. Yeah, try like 65,550 something. Okay? It's basically 64K, a little over. It's 64 times 1024, whatever that works out to be. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and it's all a power of 2. So for any given IP address, there's like 65,000 different ports that you can funnel traffic through. That's kind of mind-boggling, really. You probably don't even think about that. But when you're surfing the web and you go to a website, what's the default port for surfing the web? You guys better know this before you graduate. Port 80, very good. You've earned a slice of pizza if you want it. All right, this is very sincere, right? Port 80 is the default web address. So when you bring up a thing in the browser and you go to a website, HTTP traffic by default gets routed through port 80. But you can look at web pages on different port addresses, but you have to configure it. And if you're going to do something like that, and I'm just going to show you just like really quick here. Like at home, I was like playing with my webcam, and I was doing this, right? This is going to fail because there's probably not this IP address here on campus. But the whole point is, do you guys see this part of the IP address? So the first part is a numeric IP address. That could just as well say Coca-Cola.com, right? But after it, there's a colon and a number. That refers to a port address. Now what we're doing right now is we're forcing what we're doing to use a different port address aside from the default one because we don't want it to conflict with other traffic. Okay? And you can do that. You can custom. And it's really common if you're using an alternative port for web to use something that starts with an 8. 80 is the default, so a lot of times people will go 8080 or 800 or 8000 or 888 or something with an 8 in it, typically. That's common. But every protocol that operates over the internet, for example, like FTP or email or SMTP or maybe things that you've learned about like when you're first learning about this stuff, operates over its own port address that's unique. So FTP, for example, uses 2 ports. Tell me what they are. If you guys aren't doing this, FTP ports, or ports, okay, port 21, and it actually uses a secondary one. I don't think it's 20. I think it's 21 and 23 or something like that. And one is to send commands and one's to move data. Right? So it can use the same connection, a different protocol, different communication method, and a different port address on the same IP. That's why when you have a network, folks, you can have one IP address for like our whole school, and then those 65,000 port addresses by attacking either a different protocol or the specific port, you can route to different machines. That's why they have it, right? 65,000 is a pretty high number, so you usually probably wouldn't exhaust that. But some protocols are reserved for specific functions. Sorry for that huge detour, but I think it's an important piece of information to know, frankly. Now we are going to go back to the command prompt, and here's the fun part. Now we're going to launch the project. But you know what we're going to do is we're going to launch it in a really kind of weird way. We're not going to hit the play button in Visual Studio. We're at the command line, and we're just going to type node index. Right? That seems wrong. Now, as I press enter, before I press enter, I want you to have a consideration in mind, okay? That if I was on a server doing this, I probably wouldn't be typing this command. I would probably run the application as a service on the server that would automatically launch when the server boots. So the server boots up, it runs my application, and my application is always running so that people on the web can always access it. Make any sense? Okay. It's okay to say no. Something is wrong. And Ryan, what is it? I need to do what? I need to initialize something. Okay. So what should I do? Sounds like you have the voice of experience. I'm going to go with you. My fingers are poised to type. Tell me what to type. NPM INIT. Is this what we're doing? Oh yeah, we have. We did that last week. But what does this command do? This is the command that got us started in the first place. So you think this is the right thing to do? Maybe not. All right, really, what should be happening at this point, frankly, does anybody type this command and got it to work? You just did it and it worked. All right, so I'm the odd man out? Okay. Oh, I know what I did wrong. What didn't I do? Oh, the port's deleted, yeah. But more importantly, what didn't I do? I didn't save my file. Yeah, because it should have launched. And here I thought I was being all smart. Make sure you save your index.js file first. All right, I'm going to press enter. And if this works, we're going to take a 3-hour lunch. All right. Now notice what's going on here. What does it say? Listening on port 880 or 8080. All right. That's wonderful. 3-hour lunch. So now the question is, now how do I look at my work? Very good. Go to a browser and type localhost :8080 and kaboom, it works. All right, we're taking a break. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Now we happen to get everybody here in class to successfully do this, I believe. We did have one person that typed in all the information for both index.js and the package JSON file exactly as it should be. There were no typos. There was no smart quotes instead of regular quotes or anything like that might normally happen. And knowing from my personal experience working with this technology that sometimes when it doesn't work, even though everything looks like it should, go back to the original step where you run the npm init and recreate the original JSON file using that tool, and then all of a sudden it works. And that's the experience that Courtney had here in class. and it's one that I've had many times working with this technology. There's something about how it interacts, or like maybe the timestamp on the file. I'm not really sure exactly what it is, but just going through the process of recreating it just gets it to work. So if yours doesn't work for some reason, try that. Try that before you email me, basically, because that's one of the first things they'll make you do. All right, so let's move on to the next steps here, and hopefully everybody got it up in the browser, and you can see I have it up in my browser. And then also notice that on the command line that this is a program that just keeps running. And if this were running on a server, folks, this is the way it works. It's a process that gets launched and just keeps running, because that's how a web server is. It's a program that just sits there and waits, listens on a port for requests for certain things, and then it reacts and pushes out content to the user. Now, I'm going to jump back over to the book and follow the steps that they indicate. And one thing that they do indicate is that some of you might get a prompt like this. I didn't, because I've done this before on my machine. But if you get this window, it basically asks you to open up a port on the firewall, because by default, 8080 is not an open port. They don't want communication coming into your own machine on that port. But if you do get that window, make sure you click both public and private. Just a recommendation. In fact, most of the time when you see this window, you should click both of those. So if you did get the firewall thing, make the settings. We also completed step number 15. You guys should have been able to enter in this address in your browser and then pull the page up. And of course, all you're seeing is your web calculator, but it hopefully is working. All right. And then if you notice that it's not really loading up quite right, don't forget the Control F5 trick, and they're indicating that here as well. All right. They are making a point that all your other stuff should work too, except I don't see I have a Contact Us page in there on this one, but I'm not really too worried about it. And you have a question? All right, so I'm going to bring up that next set of instructions here. So now we're on page 385, step number 16, and now we're going to actually ramp this up a little bit. And I'm moving this off screen because we are going to be pasting the code. So we need to get back to Visual Studio. We need to go to the index.js file. Now we're going to add kind of a lengthy method to our code. And I'm just going to copy paste it in and then just give you a little blurb on it. Now, what we're doing here is we're just setting up a method that is going to use some of those packages that we had. And you can see right here how we're calling Formidable. And Formidable, you got to remember, is a package that runs inside of node.js. So we're accessing a file that's added to that, which has its own JavaScript libraries. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to be pulling in information, storing it in variables, and then what we're going to ultimately do is grab some of that stuff here. And notice how, without going into too much depth about it, we're basically going to be grabbing information here and allowing it to be stored into areas so that we can transmit it to a different machine. Okay, just kind of in a nutshell. I want you also to notice that this command that you see here, console log, and if you guys didn't notice this already, notice the one that I highlighted is a message that prints right to the console. So the console, from this standpoint, is, well, the command line, right? And when I see this down here, it says console log. This is going to output to the command line. So who gets to see that? The server admins, basically. And most server software runs this way, where sometimes it'll output to the screen, but more often than not, it usually will output right to a text file, or appends to a text file. So yes, web servers, when they're running, every time a page is requested, or an image is loaded, or a button is clicked, or JavaScript is run, it will track every single transaction and store it. It's kind of scary to think about, right? That's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of web pages getting moved around out on the internet. And somebody's like storing a lot of that. Yeah, to a point. But the reason they run log files like that, whether it goes to the console or to a file, is so that if there's a problem that happens, you can see what's triggering it. That's the how and the why. All right, so you got that command in there. The next thing they want us to do is open up the, and I think this is where I'm going to fail here because I don't think I have a Contact Us page, do I? Or is that up in Content? Yeah, I don't have that. Oops. All right. Maybe I should take a moment to copy it into my project. That's what I'm going to do. All right, a quick pause. All right, now assuming I corrected everything correctly, I noticed that I didn't have my Contact Us page here, and my default page did not have a link to Contact Us. So before I could do step number 17 and beyond, I kind of needed to make that happen. So let's go ahead and open up the Contact Us page, which is up on the screen right now. And what they want us to do is take the form, and they want us to change basically some of the attributes in the form element. First of all, we're going to change from get to post, which is really common when we're working with any server-side technology. And then we're also going to throw in an action. And here's where some of the code that we wrote before is going to come into play. And what I'm going to type in here is what the book says, which is contact message. Now, have we created that yet? I don't think so. Isn't that in the what? In the index. It might be. In fact, let's take a look. Where would that be? Ah! Very good. So really what's going to happen here is in the Contact Us page, usually an action tag will point to a script, right? Like a JavaScript file or a PHP file or an ASP file that runs some sort of programming code after the form is filled out. Here, we're using this format, which is allowed through node.js, excuse me, and then we're calling upon that method inside this index file, which will trigger this code. So what this is going to do now is it's going to take all the information from the form and process it through node.js. So it's going to process on the server side. Make sure, if you guys haven't, make sure you save your work so you don't run into the same thing I ran into before. All right. Now, one thing that I'm looking at on step number 18 here, and I'll pull my book back over to the screen, because this is what I do with my PDFs, especially if I'm using the Adobe Reader. It says, stop and start the website, and then open the browser and navigate to Contact Us. Now, in the past, when we stop and start the web server, we do that how? You click play, and then you come back here and you click stop, right? But you guys notice this isn't running here? In fact, we're not even using the Visual Studio web server to do this. What we're really using, and this is kind of like the nature of my comment here from a while back. Number 18, this is messed up. Don't launch the page using the development, so I wrote it in there from like way back when. So really what they're telling you to do is go back to the prompt, and you see right now it's listening on port 8080, but it's still running the old code. So how do you stop this? Brian? Control C is correct. And that's kind of a universal command line tool, if you guys didn't know that one. So if you have a program that runs and keeps running, Control C is how you stop it. And that's pretty common on many command line systems. So now that we stopped it, I'm going to up arrow to repeat the command and relaunch it. So now I'm relaunching the server. So now when I go back to my browser, which I'm trying to get to eventually, and I'm just going to retype the URL here just to make sure. All right, and then I'm also going to do a Control F5 to make sure it reloaded. I know it did because now I can do this, right? And now my form comes up. And it doesn't look too great. I don't think my CSS got copied over. But I'm not really worried about that. I'm worried about what the form does, not the beauty of it right now. And what's going to happen is I'm going to click in here, and I'm going to type some stuff. That's my first and last name, ASDF, ASDF. Here's my email address, ASDF. Here's my message. Hello, ASDF. And hit submit. So now what's going to happen? I don't know. Oh, wow! It actually did something. So it actually captured the form data, and then as a result of what was in here, in index.js, you notice what it did? It grabbed all the information from the form, right? First name, last name, email, and message. And then it uses the response tool and it writes back to the screen. Now, we didn't write anything fancy, so we just wrote really plain text and a couple of line breaks. And that's what we got in the browser, right? But now, if you can conceptualize this could be injected back into an entire structure. All right? So, right now we're just throwing the text back up on the screen. But that text could have been inserted into an entire page. So if you had a look to a site, that could go back onto the site. Our goal here is just to get it to talk. So that's a significant step. Seems like a really simple thing, folks, but it's actually a pretty powerful thing that we just accomplished. Yep. And I did have a question. It was a very intuitive question. Did we get anything happening on the command line? Because if you remember, the index.js file does log to the console, right? And what did it log? Well, exactly what we did. So what did it do? It typed in some text, it handled request for, and then grabbed first name and last name dynamically and wrote it back. And there it is. All right, folks, that completes exercise 1. I'm going to pause for just a moment. All right, folks, we're now going to pick up and finish exercise number 2, so I'm coming back on screen here. And notice step 1 says stop node.js from running if it's running, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to come back over to my prompt, and I'm going to type a Control-C, which stops the server. And then we're going to go back to the index.js file. And here it says, create a copy of the app post function you created in exercise 1. And it says modify the copy so it'll be a web service accessible by using the contact service relative URL. So now in order to make that clear, they add that code to the book. So if you're wondering what it'll look like, this is what it will look like. Okay. If you want to go ahead and just copy that code, copy paste it in, that's fine. Or the laborious task of actually typing, that's fine too. And then the other thing I want you to notice is when they're doing this, they're always keeping this little snippet, the port address and all that, they're always keeping that at the bottom. Did you guys notice that? Yeah. Does it, I'm going to tell you what, does it really matter? No. But, you know, let's just keep it like what the book's doing. So now we're just putting in another request handler here. So it's going to respond to a post, and if the action is listed as contact service, and it kind of does the same thing that we did before, but it's going to do something a little bit different. Now the question is, what is that little bit different? All right, so they want us to jump next, step number 3, into the scripts folder, and they want us to pull up the calculator library.js file. So here it is. It says right-click the scripts folder. So the point wasn't even that file, but anyhow, the folder is the point. All right, and they want us to go ahead and add a new JavaScript file here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And they want it to call it contact us.js. So there it is. All right. So they want us now to open up the contact us HTML file, and they want us to add script elements for jQuery and the new file we just created. So what they mean by that, of course, is they want us to take this, which two files was it? jQuery. I don't even have jQuery in here. That's bad. It shows you I'm really working on the wrong version of the project. So you guys remember how to add jQuery to a project? All right. See if you can walk me through it. Yeah, isn't it great when the teacher is struggling? But this time I'm going to be smart and I'm going to put my solution file right where my project is. How about that for being clever? There's a good spot. All right, so now let's try that again. NuGet packages. Okay, that's kind of fun to watch, right? Did a whole bunch of stuff in the background. You just go with it. Uh-oh, but where did it put it? Yeah, it's not in the right spot. Should I freak out? Yeah. Ah! Yeah, I put it in the scripts folder off the root. Oops. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to grab the jQuery file, just that. Maybe I'll grab... Yeah, just that. Actually, that's all I'm going to do. And I'm just going to drop it into my scripts folders. Can I just drag and drop it? Sure. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. You guys are probably all in a panic now, right? I see that. You're very calm and collected. Yes, I don't want to read the jQuery file. But I just want jQuery in my project. So they want us now... This is why you got to keep building upon your latest version and not old versions. Let that be a lesson to y'all. All right. But up here in the top area, we are putting in a link to jQuery. Oh, wow, it was already there. Because okay, it's a long story. I copied this file from somewhere else. Okay. Anyhow, and then I also want to put in the contactus.js library, which I'm just going to add to the bottom here. So that's basically all I want. I want to make sure you got jQuery connected, make sure you have that new JavaScript file connected, and just keep that in mind. Now, towards the bottom of this page, real close to the bottom, in fact, where the button is, they want us to make sure it's changed. Now, I'm looking at mine, and mine already seems to be okay. So they want it to say button type submit, ID submit, name submit, submit, close button. Does mine say that? Okay, I'm good. Then right below the form, right here, they want us to create a new div, ID equals result. Okay, and notice empty div. So we're just creating a placeholder that we can inject content into. That's the whole point of that, just an empty placeholder. I am scrolling down to make sure the rest of my code looks kind of okay. It seems to, although I have this like script type calculator initialize thing in there. I don't know if you guys have that in yours, but I'm leaving it. If it breaks something, I'll remove it. Not too worried about it. All right. Step number 7 now, page 389. It says in the contactus.js file, we're going to add a function that looks like this. And once again, this is going to actually allow us to do a little bit of interaction with data. That's basically what it does. So what it will ultimately do is it will look for that div called result. So you guys see that they're using Jquery here for the call selector. And then what they're going to do is they're going to return some information in HTML format and inject it into that object. That's what this is saying. All right, in addition, in this file, you're going to want to add a little bit of space up near the top. And you're going to want to add, from step number 8, both the reference path and the document ready function. Remember, we talked about the document ready function a little bit, and the purpose of that is to basically load up your code once the page is done loading. But notice that the reference path here, ooh, that's bad. Underline, right? Because that's not what we're using. What's our version? 3.3.1. All right, so now hopefully that will go away. There it went. All right, now they're telling us in step 9, stop and start Contoso Web. Now, if you followed step 1, you've already stopped it, right? Bad instructions. I should write the author. Make sure all your work is saved, folks. Go back to your prompt. If node index is the last command you prompt, just press your up arrow, press enter, get the server running, and then go ahead and bring up the Contact Us page in the browser again. Remember to do the localhost thing. So I'm just going to do localhost 8080. Then I'm going to click on Contact Us, and then I'm going to just type in some nonsense again, as I often do. And boy, my CSS is broken, but that's okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Submit. And it's not working. And it does say in step number 11, what does it say in step number 11? Control F5. You want to do a hard refresh. So let's go to 8080, Control F5. I'm going to do that a couple of times just to be sure. Hit the page. Type in my nonsense. Is it okay? Yeah, it's okay. So the whole point of the exercise is this time, instead of going to a new page, we're taking that contact and we're putting it back on the same page. Now, you guys that have done PHP and ASP, we like do that kind of stuff all the time, right? And we usually do it in a rudimentary fashion like this. But now, instead of transporting you to a different page, we're just adding it right to the same page. JavaScript and the DOM allows us to do that. Question? Oh, yeah, you're right. It did not. I didn't even catch that. I guess I wasn't even looking very close. So it's not reading the variable correctly. So let me do a Control F5 one more time. In fact, let me do this. Request for undefined, undefined. Are you guys getting the same thing, or does yours work correctly?
Mine is like doing that. I'm just saying that it'll serve in that before I go on to the open.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's interesting. All right, let me stop my server and restart it. I'm assuming everything in Visual Studio is saved, right? Seems to be. I have a couple of culprits in mind, and we'll see if my suspicions are correct. And I was running the old one again. Didn't I do Control F5? I did. Okay. I don't want to resubmit. So let's go back here, and I just want to check once again. Everything seems saved to me. Back to the browser. I haven't stopped the server. Control F5. Oh wow, isn't that interesting? You guys catch that? Let me try this again. Control F5. Should put some different content in here for starters. Now you guys tell me what I'm doing wrong. How come it worked the first time and not subsequently? Okay. One more time. Control C to quit. Okay. Back to Visual Studio. Let's do a save all. Let's do it like 5 times just to be sure. Other thing I'm going to do when I get really weird things like this happening is sometimes I'll just come up here and do a build. And see, it goes through and it just makes sure that all the things are working correctly. And now I'm going to go back to the browser. And if it doesn't work this time, or to the command prompt, if it doesn't work this time, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go ahead and try a different browser for one thing, just to see how it reacts, because I have some concerns that the cache isn't really clearing. So I should be able to, let's try Firefox this time. Okay, so far so good. Just as ugly. Okay, so now what should I do? Look at my code? Probably not a bad idea. Brilliant solution, right? Maybe there's something wrong with your code. Maybe. All right, let's take a look and just review. My reference path is okay. There's nothing wrong I see here. This stuff seems okay to me also. Great call, Joy. Somebody just pointed out to me, what's the action on my form? Did I actually change the action? Did it tell us to? Yeah, because we added this new thing, right? Contact service. But my form does what? But I don't remember it telling me to change that, did it? Oh, but yours is working. Control Z. Yeah, okay, so, oh, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, so really, here's the key, folks. I'm looking at the code. This contact us.js, right? When we click the submit button on click, it calls the server. If we call the server, it collects stuff from the contact form, serializes the information, and then it runs a post command where it calls this method, which is in index. All right. Both of those are linked up, right?
So the second copy of the post should be context script in the index file.
Yeah. So that's right. I don't see a problem there.
Well, what happens with mine is after I change
All right. Well, we're still trying to troubleshoot this, and we have like mixed results here in class. So I'm going to see if I can get mine to work, and then you guys can hopefully use it as a model. But let's go ahead and reload this. Let's go back to, we'll go back to Chrome this time. Yeah, the very first time I didn't change the thing, and it worked that first time, except it said undefined, undefined. Remember that? That, you know what, that could be. That Control F5. No, I'll tell you what, it's worthy of checking, so I'm going to jump over to my code again. And I swear that when I looked at it, we thought that it looked okay, right? Ah, excellent. Ryan, you earn your points for the day. Twice. All right, so you guys said that a half hour ago? Well, apparently you need to be more outspoken about it. You know what it is? It's age bias. I'm not making fun of you because I'm right there with you, so I'm so sorry. As I look through the Fonzie, right? All right then. All right, let me stop the server, start the server, see the process now, right? Now this time it's going to work perfectly, correct? If it doesn't, I'm going to do some edits on the video. They'll never know the difference. Right. Until they try it themselves. Undefined, undefined, undefined. Does stay on the same page, but this is not acceptable to me. But you're getting the names? Okay. My inclination right now is it is 7:28, which is a couple minutes before class stops, and I know some of you will have to go. So I'm concerned that we're going to waste our time by trying to finish the rest of this. Am I in the right spot here? Oh, this is basically the end of it, right? So we get this to work and we're done. So let's just pretend like it's working and go home. No, what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to just pause the video and see if I can figure out the little issue. And then if I figure it out, then I'll record it into the video. And I'm sure it's probably something pretty simplistic. and I have a couple of suspicions. So if you guys need to go, you can go. Otherwise, you can stay, and hopefully we'll find a fix. So I have to report back. I did figure it out. Okay, what I did is I took a little bit of examination, but what I noticed is when I was looking at my code, right, and I was just reviewing all the JavaScript and what was calling and how, and I'm like, okay, when it clicks the button, okay, great. And then I notice here in jQuery format that it's taking the stuff from the contact form that's got an ID of contact form, and then I went back and I looked at my contact form and noticed it didn't have an ID. So I put in the ID, and then all of a sudden it worked. Change the name. Yeah, name is used with JavaScript and some PHP stuff. But the selector was looking specifically for contact. All right, so I just wanted to post that into the video so to show you that it can work. And the video ends here, folks. See you next time.